It's beautiful to see you here with us today. My name is Roderick Brereton. I am from the BBPA. I'm actually the membership director for the Black Business Professional and Association. And today we are on another version of Ask a Professional. And today we actually have a very special edition where we're talking to mentors and mentees from the Black community. So a good afternoon to everybody. Hoping all is well. So before we get started in terms of our
there's my 12 o'clock. Okay, so listen, thank you so much. Yeah, and we'll talk soon. I'll send you an email.
Nadine. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, before we get started, we're just gonna ask you to introduce yourselves, people on the panel today who are with us. So we're gonna start with Keisha Ali. How are you today, Keisha?
I'm good, Rod. How are you? Hello,
well.
Everybody. As Rod mentioned, my name is Keisha, and I am a project specialist at Starbucks Canada. I have been working on mentoring programs over the past couple of years, so I'm really excited to contribute to this conversation and share and hopefully inspire other people.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, Keisha. And we have Carlton. How are you today, Carlton Darby?
Yes, I'm doing well. You know, the days are getting shorter. The weather's getting colder, but, you know, we still press on.
Absolutely.
My name's Carlton Darby. I'm a BBPA National Scholarship recipient, currently third year chemical engineering student at the University of Waterloo. And I look forward to being here with you all today to discuss, you know, mentorship from my perspective as a mentee.
Okay, beautiful. Tasia Noble, how are you today, my friend?
Not too bad. As Carlton was saying, it's getting colder, but it's quite nice. Similar to him, I'm also a mentee and a BBPA scholarship recipient in my second year of university at Guelph Humber for social work, and I'm excited to contribute my perspective from a mentee's lens of what mentorship means to me.
Okay, great to have you with us. And also we have Nadine Spencer, our president from the BBPA. How are you today, Nadine?
I'm excellent, thank you. It's really great to see everybody. Keisha, thank you for being here. Really excited about this partnership with Starbucks and really looking forward to doing a lot together, you know, that's going to benefit our Black youth. So thank you so much for being here. And Tasia, our star, one of our scholarship stars, and Carlton, one of our scholarship stars. Thank you also for being here. And I also see, my bad, right?
Yeah, I got you. My name is Yosias, but you can just call me Yossi.
Yossi, that's very nice. Thank you for being here, Yossi. And then we also have our ED, Francis Del Sol. Good to see you, Fran. And of course, Uju from BBPA. Thanks for being here.
Okay, so we're just gonna ask a couple questions of the people on the panel today, and it's a very easygoing conversation, so there won't be any really heavy questions. So, you know, please feel free to answer the questions as we go through the panel today. Okay, so a question for everybody, or just a statement. Walk us through what mentorship means to you. And we don't have to go in any particular order, but we'd love to hear from everybody. What does mentorship mean to you?
I can start.
Okay.
Mentorship to me is really about helping people. What I love about it is that it can take place in so many different forms. It can be very formal, like in a program, or it can be very informal, such as calling up a friend that you look to for advice. And it can vary to so many different types of questions. It can be financial, it could be job related, it could be personal. So for me, mentorship is really about helping in all different forms and different ways. And sometimes you don't even realize it's happening, which I think is a great benefit.
Absolutely. And I think when it's often unconscious and within our community, the Black community, I think mentorship obviously has been existing for several generations, and it's been informal. But in this sense of what we're doing with Mentor Me, and then an initiative that the BBPA is taking on with Say It Loud Canada and also our Starbucks partners and Mentor Canada. We are doing a national intentional campaign where we're going to be mentoring young people across the country and having that formal relationship with people. So very well noted in the sense of mentorship always has been going on, but it's often been not recognized as formally mentorship. So we're intentionally making sure that it is formalized in this process. Okay, so what else does it mean to people? What does mentorship mean to people?
I can. Oh, Tasia, please.
Okay. I was gonna say, like, similar to what Keisha was saying, I think it's also a mutual relationship that kind of matches like a need and experience, because when I do hear the word mentorship, think of maybe someone a bit smaller and someone who's taller than them. They're not better than them, but sometimes they can see more than they can. I know for me, and like being a mentee, there have been moments where I didn't understand something that was like baby food to someone else who knew more than I did. So just the ability to give back the experience and make that investment over time. It's like, you know, you water a flower, then the flower grows and then spreads pollen around. So kind of like that chain reaction where both give and take.
All right, it's interesting to see in terms of that the height differential that you recognize, and you know what we often perceive mentorship to be, and I think that's one of the areas that we're also going to be exploring within this endeavor is how we're seeing the changing face of mentorship, and especially what it's going to look like in the Black community across the country. So I think we are definitely going to be rewriting that narrative, and you know maybe the differential in terms of just symbolically the height won't be like this. It may be on an even keel because you know we're definitely going to be meeting people where they're at and exploring opportunities for growth on every aspect of things. So thank you very much for that, Tejan. And we had, I believe one of the brothers was, Carlton was gonna share what it meant to him.
Yeah, so for me, speaking from the perspective of a mentee, what mentorship means to me is a relationship between myself and somebody else where I'm receiving their knowledge, their advice, and their experience, whether it be on a specific topic or a specific issue or situation where I'm able to improve or better myself. And then there's that camaraderie in that relationship, you know, where it's not just simply me benefiting from what they have to offer to me and, you know, the issues or the things that concern my life, but also myself having an interest in, you know, the things that concern their life as well. And then even when I think of, you know, the compounding value of that mentorship, as I receive that knowledge and that advice and experience, where I'm at a point where I have my own experience and my own level of influence, I could then pay it forward to somebody else who comes after me, where I could, you know, take on the position as a mentor to them. So that's what mentorship means to me.
Yeah, and then I love the notion of paying it forward. So in a mentee position at this point in time, you know, we're obviously we're gearing and we're helping people get to that mentor position also based on their experience and obviously being a positive one, so that you know we're able to act as mentors for the people who are coming up, you know, underneath us or you know in the next generation. So yeah, it is definitely something that we're evolving within our community, and that will continue to grow and have its main place within our sense of community and expectations of those people who've gone before us to act as mentors and thereafter. All right, great. Thank you very much. Nadine, did you want to share on terms of what that may mean to you, mentorship means to you?
Yeah, sure. You know, a lot of I think the successes that I've had today has come out of mentors that I've worked with that has taken me on from I was the age of 16 and continue till now. And I've mentored and I've been a mentee. And you know, one of the experiences that I have is with the Junior League of Toronto. I served as president many years ago, and I remembered when I first got into the organization, a woman really took me under her wing, and she essentially transitioned out of mentorship into sponsorship. She literally took me by the hand and walk me through the course of what was needed for my success in that industry. And, and as a Black woman, some of the nuances that I didn't know, some of the business acumen that I needed to know, she literally held my hand and walked me through. And even within that organization, I mentored young other Black youth, and some of the lessons I have, and even that I use today, I've gotten out of those relationships. And one of them is that when you're in a relationship, in a mentor-mentee relationship, is to show those individuals something outside the norm, what we're not used to. And that spoke volumes, and that took, that really took me a long way in terms of the work that I do even till today. And I also learned a lot from the mentees, so much. So, I value the mentorship relationship, and I know that it's a win-win on both sides, because we also, as mentors, get to learn from our mentee, while the mentee also learns. And and then I also want to bridge that into the next level, which is sponsorship as well, because that's also critical. We need someone, especially in this particular climate, to walk with us, to say, this person belongs to be in this seat, and this is why. So and that's another form, it's what we call allyship. But that's the path and the journey that needs to happen. But it does start with mentorship. So it's a very important relationship.
Right, and I think it's a really important point that you raised there, Nadine, and knowing that the BBPA helps students every year. This year we had over 1,500 students applying for scholarships, and often as a part of that scholarship journey is mentorship, right? So I think the BBPA going on this journey in terms of now just having obviously a group of students that could use and benefit from these mentorship relationships, it's a win-win situation. So kudos to the BBPA, and obviously under your leadership for all that you do for us, and also to Franz de Staal in terms of what she's doing also for the BBPA. Okay, I've got a quick question for Keisha. So could you tell us a little bit more about your decision to become a channel or a conduit of impact in a young person's life? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, thanks, Rod. So it's interesting because Nadine touched upon this being a young person and having somebody that you see as your boss, and that distance, and saying, you know what, I see something in you. I want to help you achieve your potential. And I didn't even realize I was being mentored in my 20s until later on, when I started working on our Opportunity Youth and Refugee programs. And we were working with youth who were between 16 to 29, had a lot of barriers, or maybe immigrated here, didn't know the language, and they were trying to get their foot in the door. And I remember being at these hiring events, and before the interviews, we would kind of do these icebreaker activities to get everybody to know each other, build the confidence up of people so it wasn't so formal and intimidating. And part of the icebreaker was to go around the room and talk to people who were there from Starbucks to find out like a day in the life or career advice. How did you get to where you were? And I was only a coordinator, so I was there supporting in the background. But youth were coming up to me and asking me questions. And I was like, oh, don't you want to go talk to the store managers or the district manager? Like, they're the ones with the experience and the knowledge that you're looking for. But I realized, because I was in a similar age bracket, and because I was going through the same kind of career path that they wanted to go through, I had value in sharing my experience and sharing what I had done, and sharing what it's like to be young in Canada and trying to navigate and find your way in this crazy economy and world. And so that made me realize that I could do something when I didn't think of that before, and have an impact at my age. And I love the idea too of more like peer mentorship. So as you were saying, reducing that gap and maybe more at a similar level, I love that you can actually build a friendship and knowing kind of where the other person's coming from, because I wasn't very older when I was speaking with them. So I'm like, oh, I completely understand how hard it is to find an apartment in the city. Like, here are some resources I used a couple of years ago that could help you, or here's who I talked to in order to get advice. And so I think that when I see where can I have an impact in my life, there are so many social situations I can't solve for, but mentoring is something so simple that I can do all the time and have an impact that it was a no-brainer for me.
All right, great. Thank you very much for that. So we're going to go to some of the mentees or some of the people who've been mentored. So we're going to speak to Carlton and Tasia. So how do you see some of the lessons learned from your mentors playing out in your lives right now? And where do you see that, like, say, 5 years down the road on, some of those lessons learned being, I guess, turned around or just being implemented into your lives? Where do you see that, Carlton and Tasia?
Well, I think for me, one piece of advice that I've received from somebody that I would consider a mentor in my life is to focus on the things that you can control. Control what you can control. Don't focus on, the things that are outside of your control. And, that's really meaningful for me now. And I even see that being very meaningful 5 years down the line and even beyond that, because looking at myself as I get older and as I have more responsibilities, more autonomy, more things that I'm held accountable for, as much as I may have, say in certain decisions and actions to be taken, when it comes to other people and certain details of that situation, I may not have control. I may not have, I don't have control over, what a person may say or do, or in some situations, how a situation may turn out. But keeping in mind that, despite the fact that I don't have control over that, I do have control over the things that I say, that I do, my mannerisms, my postures, how I respond to a situation. And for me, I think that's very empowering as well as liberating, not being weighed down by the fact that, that there are certain things that, you just can't control. So I think for me, that's a piece of advice that, again, as I get older, is going to be very useful now, 5 years down the line, and even beyond that.
Okay, thank you very much. Tasia, did you want to chime in on that? In terms of how you see mentorship or the role of mentorship in your life right now and say 5 years down the road?
Yes, for sure. I think to follow up with Carlton, gave a nice segue. Even with not being able to control everything that is going on, I think one thing that I learned through mentorship was to use that control to practice integrity and to let my character shine nonetheless. There was a group mentorship program with the BBPA. And of course, with COVID, it wasn't possible for everyone to come in person. And I couldn't help but admire how our mentor, she still came out and just filled us with all the resources that she had, regardless of only two people being in the room. And we are human beings, that can be discouraging, but she acted as if the room was full. And she was going through all of her experiences, and all of her experiences stemmed from barriers and pushing through nonetheless, and saying, where there's a will, there's a way. If I can still eat and get up the next morning, I'm going to keep moving. And it was just very admirable to me how she dealt with that tension and pushed through, because that's why she was able to speak to us that day.
Okay, you actually mentioned a couple key words. You spoke about barriers. So what are some of those barriers that mentorship can help, especially Black youth? And so what are some of those nuances, cultural nuances that Black youth face that mentorship can assist with or support with? And that goes to yourself and Carlton. You can answer that.
Oh, yes, for sure. So for myself specifically in the workshop that we're doing was for Black women. So I know that when I was younger, I struggled with low self-esteem and not seeing any role models and kind of shying or dumbing myself down and trying to navigate through that. I don't look like everybody, and I don't have to talk and look like everybody to still make a difference. So she was helping us with that, being a Black woman herself as well too, and how she navigated through that. Instead of responding with retaliation, keeping that mannerism, coming back. You don't know something, you go and search and let them know you do know. So it kind of just fueled my understanding of how to navigate through that and not to see myself and less than, and to see where cultural appropriation has come from and how to see the power in my skin, and not just the slave history, but the empowerment that comes from being Black myself too.
Right. And as we know, as you just mentioned, that slave history is only a disruption in our legacy as a people. And obviously in terms of history, it's been a short period, but obviously very devastating period. But the resiliency plus the brilliance that we have innately within us will definitely break those barriers and help us get through to the next level. Carlton, what are some of the barriers that you've seen or that you're aware of that mentorship can help with?
Yeah, so one barrier that I would say mentorship can help with is the misconception that, in a particular situation or circumstance that you're alone. This idea that, depending on what it is that you're going through or the mountain that you're trying to overcome, that it's just so overbearing and so unique to you that there's no way around it or no way over it or through it. But when you have somebody, especially somebody that looks like you and shares a similar walk of life, that has gone through similar situations as you and has seen a way out and has seen a way to the finish line, it challenges that misconception to look at somebody and say like, hey, my mentor has gone through a similar situation, and it encourages you to know that you can go get through it as well or overcome that barrier along with, whatever knowledge, experience, insight, or advice that mentor can give to you. And that could be applicable to many different contexts, whether that might be, an obstacle or barrier towards personal growth, towards a professional growth in terms of, jumpstarting your career, building a resume, going through interview, job application processes, many different contexts like that. So again, big part of mentorship in terms of overcoming that barriers, knowing that you're not alone and having somebody that can, give you relative insight.
All right, great answer. Thank you very much. So there's a general connotation, I guess, that is associated with mentorship. And, we all know that it takes time. It's a commitment people have to take out of their busy lives. It's not often a straight road because, we're human beings and nothing ever goes as planned. So what makes it worth doing? And this question can go to Keisha, Nadine, Fran. What is it in terms of mentorship that continues to have you show up to the table to want to do this? What is it about, I guess, just that commitment and that personal trait within yourselves that continues to have you show up at the table?
I mean, I think just for myself, I think about what it meant to me. And I think our responsibility as leaders is to give back. And this is a part of that giving back. And, it's to look at the possibility in someone and bringing that forward. Because sometimes, they say people see themselves this big, but we need to see them this big and then help them step into that. And I know that's what keeps me coming back, because when I look at the results of the students that I've mentored over the years till today, when I see young people flourish, and if I think that I can be a beacon of light in that, just a little bit of that water to help that seed flourish, it's a small thing for me to do, and it's a bigger impact for that mentee. And it's a win for not just that individual or myself, but it's a win for the community as well.
Okay, so you definitely see the worth of it in sense of your commitment and your time and what blossoms out of it. Okay, excellent.
Absolutely, yeah,
Keisha,
absolutely.
do you want to talk about sense of that commitment and that not a toll, but that you're investing your time into somebody else's life or lives, Do you see the worth of it, and what does it mean to you in that regard?
Absolutely. I mean, Nadine hit all the points. Plus, it also goes back to why I made the decision to even get involved in somebody else's life and help them along the way. When we think about all the things that we can't do, what can we do? How can we pay it forward? The community connection is so important too. It's that ripple effect. You have no idea how much those conversations can go on and on and on and on. Through your one conversation, that could provide the knowledge, the advice, the self-esteem, the confidence that that person can then take, apply it elsewhere, give that advice to somebody else. I mean, why? I don't really see it as taking up my time and resources. It is a responsibility. It's something that you do because it's the right thing to do. When I think about the compounding benefits, like when that person's confidence is growing, my confidence is growing. Seeing them flourish, it also helps me grow and learn, because I mean, who would have thought that somebody would listen to me? Providing value to people, that's never time invested. That's just doing what you should be doing. And it's remarkable to look back and see how conversations have such an impact, because it's something we do all the time. We talk all the time to people, and it adds up to such a large impact. And mentorship really can help shape and guide a person for them to then go on and have a huge impact. So even if you formally mentor one person in your life, it's immeasurable what that value is. So I think it's worth it. If you talk to me about it, you're never going to hear, oh no, if you don't have time, don't even bother. It's if you have something as simple as 30 minutes a month, you can mentor somebody. And we spend 30 minutes talking to other people all the time about different things. So it's not a huge investment of time or energy. It's just if you personally have the will and want to help other people.
Right. I think that was brilliant. And I think also you mentioned the reciprocal nature of mentorship. So we often disassociate the benefits being with the mentee, but that mentor being able to gather and then see the growth of that person also. So talk about that. And obviously it's almost a no-brainer about how that makes you feel. But what are some of those, I guess, the emotions and the benefits for yourself as being a mentor that you gather from mentoring somebody? What would you say those are?
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked questions before where I didn't have the answers. And I would then go seek out those answers or have other conversations, which also helps me grow, but make sure that the advice that I'm giving to somebody else is sound. For myself, I have a really good background financially. I worked in a bank for a long time, and I made sure to understand because I wanted financial literacy for myself. And every time I explain to somebody how the system works, I get better and better at explaining it in simpler terms for somebody to understand, for them to incorporate it into their life. So it helps me also get better at what I'm doing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Our executive director, Francis So.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that to support what the young lady said is, as you teach, you learn, right? So for me, I still speak about my mentors that go back 40 years because you remember what the impact was on your life. And I'd be hard pressed to find somebody who's been mentored who would not want to be a mentee, who would not want to share that knowledge, who would not want to impart that kind of feeling that you get when somebody is helping you, not giving you a handout, but rather giving you a hand up so you can get a clearer picture, a bigger picture of what the real world is like. So I support everything that you've said, and I my mom used to say, as you teach, you learn, and so it's sort of a revolving cycle. You teach, you learn. You teach, you learn, because you learn how people feel about how you make them feel. So I just see that it's a noble, it's not a profession, but it's a noble undertaking that we would want to impart our knowledge and learnings with those who follow us, and then the expectation is that you will continue to do the same.
Great. I really love the statement that you made. It's not a handout, it's a hand up, right? And I think in human nature, when we're able to support somebody or assist somebody and watch them blossom, it's also a process within ourselves that we grow too. So beautifully said, man. Well, just out of curiosity, what's one of your most memorable mentorship moments? You said you had 40 years of mentorship.
Oh my goodness. The head of the hospital networks, the chief procurement officer, I hired right out of university in Montreal. And I remember him saying, I can't move to Toronto. I'm an engineer. And I said, but you can do procurement. You can, engineers, we need people to design in procurement. And I convinced him, he was newly married, convinced him to move to Toronto. And today he still calls me when he needs to have to go through some problem he might have at the hospital network. I have the one of the vice presidents of Ackland Granger had just landed from Jamaica maybe 6 months when I hired her at Bell Canada. And she moved her way up to vice president of Ackland Granger. But I told her at the time, as I did this young man who was at the health network, it was time to leave. It was time to exit where you were now, because you could no longer grow. So you needed to step out into a different realm, So I have lots of experience with right. Encouraging young people but I think the important thing is to know when you're at that point where you need to step out of your zone. It may not be comfortable, and you may be asked to do something that you don't even know how to do it. But one of the things that successful people do is they jump into the unknown. They say, you know what, I don't know how to do it, but I know how to find the people who can help me do it. And that is how you succeed. So fear is one of the things that keep us back, because we tend to want to remain in the comfort zone. So I would say to the young mentees on that, when you get into that zone where you feel a little afraid, that's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Okay, absolutely. As we all know that discomfort is where we grow, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously. So, I mean, and that brings me to another question for mentees and mentors. So what are some of the good characteristics of a mentor? Like some people want a cheerleader who's just going to say, go, 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 without any basis in terms of, I guess, having a strategy or, a cheerleader versus a coach. So what are some of those strategies that you find, or some of those characteristics that are essential for a mentor to have when they're in a relationship with a mentee? What are some of those characteristics that are positive that you find help that person to grow? And that can go for anybody on the panel or anybody listening.
I think that active listening is so important. One thing that I've learned over the years, and this is from being mentored as well, is that often people listen to respond. Like when someone is speaking, you've already have in your head what it is you want to say, instead of stopping and assessing what is this person actually communicating to me. And often what they might be saying is not really what they're trying to say. So I think active listening is so important, and taking the time to stop and be present. Being present is also something that I think is so important, not being distracted by the other things, or not even assuming that because you've mentored somebody in a similar situation, that same advice or coaching is going to be applicable. So active listening to make sure, and being present with that one person and making sure they are truly getting what they need from you.
Okay. So you're speaking our language in terms of active listening, but what are some of the active listening techniques that you find that are beneficial? For
as
those
simple as,
yeah.
Looking the person, or if you're on the phone, you can't look at them, but not making a response in your head already. Just literally listen and ask a question again. Like if you're not sure, ask them to repeat it, ask a clarifying question before you respond. And if you're not face to face, where you can put your phone away, if you're at home, turn off the TV, don't have something else going on. Don't be like texting on your phone, like actually being present and listening. Like it sounds so simple, but listening is not easy. So I think those kind of techniques really will help with getting to the root of how can you help this person in that moment.
Right. Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, I always think about one of the things a coach said to me many years ago when I didn't want to do the work as a mentee. He said, you know, Nadine, a coach is someone who makes you do what you don't want to do. So what you do want to do, you do it better. And you know, I think, you know, one of the things that we have to sort of be open to hearing those things that we don't necessarily want. And I know in my own personal life that has helped me a lot in the role of mentorship and menteeing. And, you know, I always say that anytime I'm working, I'm dealing with someone in any capacity, whatever I say always comes from the place of love and respect. And I think, you know, to Keisha's point about listening is being listening and being open to hearing things that you may not want to hear, so you can be propelled and pushed towards your best potential.
All right, great. Anybody else want to chime in on that? So right now, actually, we just have Farley Flex, who's just joined us, business partner, obviously from Say It Loud, Canada, who's a figure within the community who's stood out, obviously mentored several people along the way. Good afternoon, Farley. How are you today? I think you're muted though, my brother.
Apologies. How you doing, bro?
I'm well. How are you?
Everybody's good?
Everybody's great.
Good.
So we're talking about good characteristics of a mentor. What do you think some of those things are that when people are mentoring relationships, that it makes the relationship more fruitful and more productive?
I would say the number one thing, having been mentored more so virtually, and having mentored individuals, is a sense of empathy, like understanding where the mentee is coming from, right? All of the circumstances that would allow them to succeed and the barriers that they're facing that would or could prevent them from succeeding. If you don't know those things, it's virtually impossible to mentor someone. It's not just a template that you can go by, albeit, when I think in these times when we have so much access to so much information, I echo what Michael Lee Chin says, where he says, find a mentor, find out exactly what they did to get where they are and do the exact same thing, right? I like that, but what I love is doing that and then adding your own personal touch to your journey so that you're getting more fulfillment out of it. You're hitting the targets that you want to hit personally. Like if your target is just making money, then that's a generic goal, right? And it's probably not the healthiest goal either. But if you want to make a difference or have an impact or live your legacy while you're alive, then I think those really particular nuances that you can offer as an individual, take that sort of message and make it more specific to who you are, so that people can seek you out as a mentee to become a mentor.
All right, thank you very much for that. And from the young people on the line with us today, what makes a good mentor relationship? What are some of the things that a mentor ideally could bring to your life that would be beneficial?
Just to segue from what Nadine was saying, and Farley, and seeing the person and what they do and not having that template. I think it's very important to not have that fixed, rigid template. And with giving that constructive feedback, like Nadine was talking about, with perspective and establishing a strong foundation of trust. Like I always hear this line, and it's a quote I've never forgotten: open rebuke is better than secret love. In terms of giving that feedback to the person, where you're not actually cheering them on to do something that will lead them off their path. But I've noticed as a mentee, if there's no foundation, it can sound a bit robotic. It can sound cliche or like a platitude. Like, for example, it's going to be okay, things will get better, versus I've noticed you've told me this and this has happened and that has happened based on am I hearing you correctly? And giving that context through the encouragement, because it can be genuine, but we hear those things very often, right? And mentorship is personal. You don't want just quotes you can search on Google. So I think that trust, perspective taking, the listening, the clarifying, and just observation. Sometimes my mentors would come and say, last week you talked about this and you didn't, or you're saying this, but you seem down, or I noticed you do this. Do you know this is a strength? And just that observation from nonverbal cues, it's meant a lot to me.
All right, and I think that's really great valid points that you're bringing forth in the sense of obviously the active listening that Keisha spoke about, but also validating the person's emotions. And mentorship is just more than just a relationship that is, I guess, just on the surface. It's something that you hopefully will make that rapport and that relationship so that you're able to challenge people, that you're able to hone in on, how they may be feeling, or, what is resonating with them from what they're not. So I think what you just said are realistically some of the beneficial characteristics that mentors could bring into somebody's life, is that they've got to be also open and vulnerable too. And open to learning, right? Because it is a learning, again, a reciprocal process where, it's just not one person benefiting, it's the, 2 or 3 people, whoever are within that relationship. So great point. Anybody else wanted to, excuse me, add into what makes that good mentoring relationship, or some of the good characteristics that a mentor could bring forth?
Just to chime in again, I think what Tasia said is really encapsulates the word care, right? If you're going to be mentoring someone, there has to be a fundamental appreciation for caring for others, right? And then on the recipient side of it, or the mentee side of it, you have to care about yourself, right? Once you care about yourself, you will look for the things that will make you the best person you can be. And, Rod, you and I always talk about curiosity about one's potential. Curiosity, the journey to or sustained curiosity would often include in that journey. Well, mentorship is something that a curious person should be seeking out, because what we don't want to do is waste time reinventing the wheel, right? And what mentorship does is it allows you to fast track through the things that can hold you back, just in terms of your time and your rate of efficiency. So what we want to have happen ultimately is that the mentor helps you to see more clearly the road ahead, the barriers or the detours that you might need to take or work around, et cetera, et cetera. And so it boils down to care. And the other thought I had was just about readiness. People need to be ready to be mentored, and also ready to be a mentor, right? And there's some groundwork we all have to do where possible relative to circumstance. That's where the empathy comes in. Expecting a young person who's oblivious to the value of mentorship to seek out mentorship it's asinine, really, right? So what we want to have happen is that the messaging around the benefits and the openness and the accessibility, right, is what is really most valuable to get started.
All right. Absolutely. Carlton, you were going to chime in there?
Yeah, and before I add, if I could just backtrack to what Keisha was saying about active listening, which I found so good, because one thing that I've learned from my pastor, one whom I've had, a mentor, mentee moments with, is listening to understand as opposed to listening to respond. So I think that's really good when it comes to active listening. So if I could just add, in addition to that, I think one quality or characteristic that I find really good in a mentor is honesty. And I think it complements well with everything that has been said. So for example, if I have a mentor where I'm seeking guidance, advice, and comments on, let's say, my resume, for example, it's great, if my mentor says, oh yeah, this looks great, it's perfect, it's awesome, but that doesn't provide an opportunity for me to improve on that resume. So while all those great compliments are great, to have somebody that says, like, yes, this looks good, but this could be changed, you could add this type of wording, or change the type of layout of this part of your resume, is something that I think is just as important, if not more so important, than just giving compliments, to again provide that room for continuous improvement.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we call that cheerleader versus coach. A cheerleader is going to say, go, 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 go. But as a coach will challenge you, right? To help you get to that next level, to bring out things in you that you may not have seen, right? So I think that, again, a very valid point. And mentors that I've had in my life often have played that coach role. And sometimes, I guess, depending on where the individual may be at in their life, it could be construed as, maybe that person's too pushy. But once you see the benefits to your own life, I think you definitely, in most cases, will start to recognize it and value that, in the sense of, again, that growth happens in those uncomfortable positions, right? Growth doesn't happen. We use if you're in the gym and you're trying to gain muscle mass and you're curling 45 pounds for the last year, you're probably not going to grow. You may get more defined, but once you slap on another 5 pounds on each side of that bar, you will see the growth, right? It's going to take you a little bit longer to lift it up, but you will see that ultimately as an outcome of your hard work and challenging yourself. So I think a mentor, as you were saying, can bring challenge to the relationship, but the mentee also has to be an open book or that sponge to be able to soak up and unrecognize when they're being challenged for their own benefits.
For sure.
Yeah, I think just to add, in my experience with people who have mentored me, I have seen that in as much as I want to be radically challenged, I also want to see that they genuinely care, because there's a way that I can be challenged that would come off at me and it would feel like, oh, the effort that I'm putting in is not being appreciated, or how some criticism will come and it would just not sit well with some people. But just that thin line, or that fine marriage between genuinely caring and radically challenging your mentee, which is something that I have seen is a very valuable attribute in mentors.
Right. And it's a journey, right? Again, it's not just a destination that we're going to reach in terms of creating that relationship that is wholesome and therapeutic for all parties, right? So, we talk about, forming that rapport first. We have to have a rapport to form a relationship. And when you think about relationships, when there's a trusting relationship, when there's a caring relationship, that's where growth can occur. That's where, when you're challenging somebody, it may not be seen as, oh, this person is just, coming in like a drill sergeant, or, they're too pushy, right? Because you've been able to establish that understanding with that individual, so that there's, again, that room for growth and opportunity, right? So I think we, from a mentorship perspective and a mentee perspective, we've got to be open to, just growing, because that's what we're ultimately there to do, right? So another question I have for the realities of the Black community, and because as Keisha talked about earlier, this is something that is relatively new in a formalized fashion for the Black community, the Canadian Black community, especially, right? So what are some of those things that we can do as a community to challenge those narratives that have been written or that haven't actually been written? Because we're literally introducing something now that's new to the Canadian context, the Black Canadian context. What are some of those best practices that we could bring in terms of encouraging people to become mentors or to be menteed? Because, again, it has been happening informally, but not in this context like we're going to be doing in Mentor Me. So what are some of those things that we could do? And then anybody can chime in on that to help change that narrative.
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, it's the thought that we do not have that capacity within our community. Okay. So I think it's important that we identify and target those who have had some element of success in all the disciplines that we want to mentor folks in. But I think there is this perception that we aren't ready because we do not have it, and that does not mean we can't be diverse in our mentorship base. But I think to start the race, we need to have those faces present. So that in itself diminishes that concept or takes away that concept that we're not ready and we do not have those capacities.
Okay, great point. What else can we do?
I think adding on to what Fran had said as well too, which really struck a chord with me, with like not being ready. Because I know like when I was younger, I wasn't seeking for that, and I know, oh, it's not there. Like I don't have access to that. I think also too, with regards to that, because hardships do happen, not using those to like define us, but to refine us. Because in mentorship, if we're going to build that strong rapport, identifying the issues that are at hand, and for those who have received an element of success, for example, my mentor specifically, she got into the nitty gritty of the hardships that she's faced. Because sometimes as you're seeking for advice or guidance, it could seem like, here's a blueprint, just do this, and you can't do that, because it's not just a straight narrow path. So actually identifying the issues as one who has received an element of success, and seeing the value in your hardships, the value of not having a father or a support system, or being on the verge of eviction, those real life stuff that can really touch home with your mentee, so that connection can be built in terms of identifying the issue that's at hand and changing the switch and rewriting the narrative.
Brilliant. I really like the fact that you were saying, some of that lived experience of the mentors. It may not come in one batch or one day, but as time goes on, allowing the mentee to also chime into that mentor's life. And for a lot of us in our community, it hasn't been a straight road or an easy road. So sharing some of those challenges that they've experienced in their lives, and also allowing the mentee to know that obviously they're not alone, and having, again, that reciprocal relationship where vulnerabilities and some of the things that often are not said in certain forums could be put into context, and how we are resilient, but also in a sense of our brilliance and our ability to overcome some of these challenges. It's a valuable piece. Farley, did you want to chime into that?
Yeah, what I was going to say is that we have to be very careful that we don't make a sweeping assumption as to what success means to an individual, right? And so we can say, let's hypothetically introduce young people to people that we deem successful, but success is a very relative term, and the goals, much of what the success as it's defined generally is based on what those outside of our culture determine success to be. We live in a capitalistic society. The very fundamental basis of a capitalistic society is that you need somebody to capitalize on, right? And in this case, it's been Black people for over 400 years. So when we talk about success, we have to ensure that the individual is aware of that, first of all, they're empowered to define success for themselves. But in order to be empowered to define success for themselves, they have to know what the various aspects of success are from a cultural lens and a historical or hereditary lens, whatever you choose to preface it with. And I personally define success as happiness. Money has nothing to do, while I do my best to accumulate it, right? But it has nothing to do with my day-to-day happiness. And I think that's a distinction that we have to look at when we look at Aboriginal peoples, of which we're just displaced Aboriginals at this point. But technically, Aboriginal communities don't overconsume anything, right? So they don't accumulate. If we speak about Canadian indigeneity, you kill a moose for food. If there's extra meat, you give it to your neighbor. You don't charge them for it. You just give it to them, because rather than the meat rot in your domicile or whatever it may be. So I think we've got to look at these things in accordance with what the world has told us, because most, quite frankly, of what the world has told us is not conducive to our betterment. So I just encourage young people to really discover themselves, and again, lastly, to make that distinction between happiness and joy, right? They're not the same thing. They use obviously as synonyms quite often, but they're not the same thing. Joy is, as I define it anyway, and everything I'm saying is strictly Farleyisms. But as I define joy to me is seeing my child walk for the first time, or hear my child say my name, or what have you. Happiness is a little less than that in terms of the drive and the sense of purpose that it brings to my life. So for the young people, anyone really, because you can find these things at any stage in your life. An example would be Nelson Mandela. If I said to everyone, who thinks Nelson Mandela was a successful man? Everybody put their hand up, right? But guess what? He wasn't, in his mind, he wasn't. He wanted to be the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, light heavyweight boxing champion of the world. So to him, he failed. and that was shared with his loved ones, right? He did great things for us as a people, right? But for himself, that wasn't his primary goal. So, all these things we have to give consideration to, and money's the same thing. We see somebody driving a certain vehicle, living in a certain neighborhood, has nothing to do with what Farley, again, defines as success.
All right.
So I wanted to share that.
Thank you very much. So we're gonna have two quick questions just to wrap up. And this one is for the young people. And again, anybody can come in on this question. Are Black youth, or if you think about yourselves and our friends, are they ready for mentorship? Or has society, based on its lack of affiliation with Black community and mentorship, has it basically written something that, it's not cool, or, we're not into that? What is your take on that? Are we ready for mentorship?
Rod? Yeah. Quick thought, it's important when you ask that question that folks don't confuse readiness with need.
Correct,
right?
absolutely. Thank you very much.
Distinctly different things.
Absolutely. Do you think our Black communities recognize the need for the mentorship? What's your take?
There have been times I've wondered if persons have said to themselves, you don't need anybody. You can really figure it out on your own. You can do it. It's like a badge of honor to having had said, this is me and I did it. I didn't need you. I did it on my own, kind of thing. So I think also there needs to be that focus on helping people, helping Black youth to understand that you don't really need to do it on your own, that there is the opportunity for that guidance. There are persons who have gone through and experienced the mistakes that you might possibly make. Mentorship is about encouraging people to understand that, look, you don't need to make these mistakes yourself. You don't need to lose the time. Here is a path of action that will get you to where it is that you want to be. This is how you can leverage the experience of people around you. Sometimes people will dismiss the thoughts of someone who is older with the viewpoint of, they don't know what's happening now. They don't know what's up, kind of thing. So I think also, there is that role of trying to help Black youth to understand that there is help there, and that there is value in drawing on the perspectives of people who have experienced similar issues as they would know.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Absolutely. Anybody else just want to chime on that quickly?
Yeah, if I could, just add on to what Tanisha was saying. Well, with what Tanisha was explaining is what, an answer that I had for your previous question, which is, our community really understanding, basically just summarizing what Tanisha said, that no man is an island, right? You're not supposed to do it all on your own. And I think with our, when you look at Gen Zs, the younger generations, I think we have a better understanding of that, knowing that, you don't have to do it all on your own. And I'm speaking through the lens of, people that I know within my circle of friends. But I think that as more people, as more Black youth, comes to that full realization that, we don't have to do it all on our own, that we're not an island, that there is strength in numbers, then more will better recognize the need to have, those mentorship relationships.
All right. And on that note, very well said. We want to thank everybody who's participated in this panel. We could definitely go on for, a lot longer than we have in terms of this hour that we've spent. But thank you very much for all of your participation and your insights. And before we break, I'll get Farley just to talk a little bit about Mentor Me within the 1 minute, what Mentor Me is going to be, and just the opportunities for mentors to actually for people to become mentors within our community, and also for the opportunity for young people to be menteed. So Farley, do you want to just end off on that note?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, on the 12th, for those of you who are Anglophone, if there are any Francophones on the phone, it would be the 11th, but we're going to be having a Zoom panel discussion with subject matter experts and so forth from the Say It Loud program in the various categories that we're aligning for the young people to debunk what we call the negative stereotypes associated with Black youth. And I believe Rod may have listed them, but if he hasn't yet, there would be technology, entrepreneurship, social innovation, literary, culinary, visual, fashion, and performance arts. And to Fran's point earlier, it's critical that we see ourselves in success as we define it. So if someone as a mentor defines himself as successful and believes they have particular metrics or information they want to share with young people, then the opportunity to become mentors is absolutely there through Mentor Me. If you are someone who's looking for mentorship, that alignment will not just be a random cut and paste and okay, here's your mentor. It's based on alignment of interests, personality traits, and skill sets, which is one of the fundamental aspects of what we do at Urban Res Solutions. So we'll align people with individuals who can help them get closer to that goal or sense of aspiration that they may have. And it's an ongoing, the first phase of it is going to be 6 months long, but we're going to try and make it a perpetual available thing for Black youth. And the overall purpose, as I close, is to close the gap that the transatlantic slave trade and colonization has caused. We will always have incremental success stories, but when we look unilaterally, for every one of us that deems ourselves successful, there's a number, and I don't know the exact number, but they're probably in the scores of the hundreds of Black youth that are falling through the cracks. And if we don't change that mathematical ratio to increase the number of Black people and young Black people that see themselves as having something to aspire to that's conducive to becoming productive members of society and the communities they live in, then it's kind of all for naught, right? So we can't look at these things individually, and that's what mentorship and menteeship does, is that it takes more than one, as the young man, I believe his name was Carlton, said. We need to collaborate, we need to share, we need to work as a collective action model that is sustainable, it's resilient, and it's perpetual.
Right. And it's changing culture. So on that note, I wanted to say thank you very much to all of our panelists. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, Carlton. Thank you, Tasia. And thank you, Fran. And Nadine. And thank you thank you very much to Uju for coordinating this, putting this all together. And as Farley said, please join us on November 11th for the Francophones and November 12th for Mentor Me, the collaboration with Starbucks Canada, the Black Business Professional Association, Mentor Canada, and Say It Loud. On that note, we are signing out. So au revoir. See you next time. And as the wise words of Fran de Saul said, mentorship is not a handout, it's a hand up. I love that. So on that note, we'll see you later. Take care, everybody.
Good one, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.